It's this part. Gandalf fighting the Balrog there in Khazad-dûm, stating, "You shall not pass." But what is actually happening at this moment? After Gandalf tells the Balrog that "you shall not pass," he tells him that "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor." And he also tells him, while commanding him that he cannot pass, that the dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Udun, go back to the shadow. There's a lot there to unpack of what potentially he's saying there. I know I review this information in a lot of the videos that I do, but I think it's important just to have this understanding that Eru Ilúvatar is the god within the Tolkien universe. And before Eru Ilúvatar created the world which Middle-earth sits in, that world being Arda, he created these powerful spiritual, almost like angelic beings. And they were known as the Ainur. And these Ainur were divided into two categories, the more powerful being the Valar and the less powerful being the Maiar. And the Maiar served the Valar. And some of these Ainur came to Arda, the world which in Middle-earth resides, to live. They lived in Aman, kind of like a continent, in what would be considered kind of a country of Valinor. Well, one of these Valar became the first Dark Lord, and that was Melkor, and eventually he became Morgoth. And Melkor, through his influence and power, was actually able to develop a following of some of these Maiar, along with other creatures. One Maiar of note that became his follower went on to become the second Dark Lord, Sauron. And then some of these other Maiar that followed Melkor or Morgoth, after becoming corrupted, they became the Balrogs. And potentially prior to their corruption, they were spirits of fire, with some of these Maiar being associated with different natural elements. So we've discussed those Balrogs, who were initially Maiar, that were corrupted after following the Dark Lord Morgoth, who was once the Valar Melkor. We have another Maiar in particular that is very important and integral to this story, and that Maiar is Gandalf. I know I've touched on it in other videos, but prior to Gandalf coming to Middle-earth in the form of a wizard, he too was a Maiar. And during that time, before he came to Middle-earth as the wizard Gandalf, he was known as Olorin while living there in Valinor with the Valar. And just as the Balrogs served Melkor or Morgoth, Olorin served a Valar named Manwë. Manwë was chosen to be the ruler of Arda, which again is that world that Middle-earth resides in. He was also the ruler of Valinor, and of the airs and winds, and of eagles. So now that we have an understanding of all of that, speaking specifically of this Balrog that Gandalf fought with there in Khazad-dûm, he was actually known as Durin's Bane. Well, you may remember from either the book or the movies on how it was stated how the dwarves had delved too deeply into Moria. Well, back in the year 1980 of the Third Age, King Durin VI was actually killed by this Balrog. And that is why it's known as Durin's Bane, because that Balrog had killed King Durin VI. And then actually that same Balrog killed Durin's son, Nain the First, a year later. Now, coming back to the year 3019 of the Third Age, when Gandalf is fighting Durin's Bane, this Balrog there in Khazad-dûm. In reality, what this is, it's two Maiars that are fighting each other. However, perhaps a slight difference with Gandalf is that his commission whenever he came to Middle-earth was to have his powers restricted. And for the most part, he was just supposed to provide counsel and wisdom and guidance to those in Middle-earth, and by persuasion to help lead the people of Middle-earth against the dark forces of Sauron, to help them to make the right decisions and to fight against darkness, but to not really use his full power as a Maiar. This is one of the reasons why I love this part of the movie and in the book so much, is because you get a little bit of a glimpse of how powerful Gandalf really is, which is a rare thing here in his wizard form. And now going back to what Gandalf told the Balrog there, that he should not pass. Whenever he commanded him, "You shall not pass. I am a servant of the secret fire." So my understanding from what that means is that Eru Ilúvatar's creative power is often referred to as the secret fire. It's also referred to as flame imperishable. So basically what Gandalf is telling the Balrog right now is, I am a servant of the One, Eru Ilúvatar, or at least a servant of his will. And then he tells him that he's a wielder of the flame of Anor. Anor means sun in the Sindarin language. Sindarin is an Elvish language within Tolkien's writings, which when you think about it, he's combating this entity that is this destructive fire. And the light that this Balrog gives is drenched in shadow and in evil. Or as Gandalf is saying, that I am a wielder of the flame of the sun. And from what I take from that, that basically means that the fire or the light that Gandalf brings is a creative, enlightening, life-giving light. So you literally have these two polar opposites, which is potentially why he says the dark fire will not avail him, because I'm coming with the pure fire and the pure light. And he tells him, Flame of Udun, go back to the shadow. And Udun, as I understand it, is another word for Melkor's home, or one of his first strongholds that he built within Middle-earth, Melkor being Morgoth. So he's basically saying, I am a servant of the secret fire, and I wield the flame of the sun. The dark fire that you carry will not beat this fire. Go back to the shadow. Go back to that darkness that you crept from, which is your original master's home. And lastly, there's some potential that Gandalf also may be referring to the one ring of power that he possesses at this point in time, that elvish ring of Narya. That ring is referred to as the Ring of Fire. And again, the fire associated with that ring of power is not the destructive, dark, shadowy fire. It provides that same sort of power we discussed with the light of the sun. So perhaps he's also alluding to that as well, that could be providing some of the power and fighting against Durin's Bane. As you've read the books or watched the movie, they fight and they have this tremendous battle. And eventually Gandalf does beat the Balrog. And it states that he threw down his enemy and smote his ruin on the mountainside. But after that, everything that it took Gandalf to do that, he ends up actually dying. Well, how did he come back? The One sent him back. Eru Iluvatar, the god of the Tolkien universe, sent him back. And so he was sent back because he had not completed what he was sent there to do. And then who comes and finds him as he's on this mountaintop? Well, thinking back to the Valar that Aloran, or Gandalf, served there in Valinor prior to him being sent to Middle-earth as a wizard, or Gandalf, Manwë. And who is Manwë a lord of? Eagles. And the eagle that came was Gwaihir, and that was the lord of the eagles at that time. And so Gandalf returned as Gandalf the White. So in thinking about how some of that could potentially apply to our own lives, either in my own or yours, number one, I think there's beauty in reserved power. Gandalf is actually a Maiar, and whenever he was sent to Middle-earth, he was sent to persuade and to not use his full power. I personally love the idea of growing in intellect and in strength and in resources, and being someone who is very capable, and even someone that can protect if that is what is necessary. However, the idea of restrained power is something that is beautiful to me. If you take a look at the Balrog, or Sauron, or Morgoth, it's unrestrained and cruel power. However, with Gandalf, he actually is an incredibly powerful being, yet he's reserved. And he chooses select moments to actually show some of that power. But for the most part, he uses counsel and persuasion and tries to guide others to see the good in the world. And for me, when I see that as an example of something that I want to be like. Second thought is, where do we draw our power from? Again, you have these polar opposites of different fires fighting each other. You have this dark, shadowy, destructive fire, and then you have this life, light-giving, creative power coming at each other. For me personally, I think that it's important to draw my power from things that are good and to focus on things that build and create and uplift and provide light and life. So often it appears that things are so contentious and so difficult, and there's so many sides that are vying for their own, and there just appears to be so much destruction going on that it's hard to see the good light, I guess, if you will. But I think if we strive and we try, even if we don't agree with one another, if we could at least listen to each other and try to understand where we're coming from, and to try to build and uplift and not tear down and to destroy, we might be able to cling to the type of fire that creates and provides life instead of that type of fire that destroys and corrupts. Lastly, the idea that Gandalf came back because his task was not done is also an important thing to me. If you're alive or breathing, or if I'm alive or breathing, we have things that, at least in my opinion, that we're here for. There's a reason why we're here. We don't want to waste that gift. there's things that we can still accomplish. There's things that we can still do while we are still here. And I like to look at it as if, you know what, I'm still here. My task isn't done yet. There's still things for me to do. Some of that may be for my own personal good in developing myself and in going after the things that I think that are important and chasing my dreams, but also taking a step out of oneself and seeing the good that we can do for other people. If we're still here, if we're still alive or breathing, our task is not complete yet, and there's still good that we can do, whether it be the good in following through on our dreams and aspirations or goals, or the good that we can do for other people. So anyways, I love that part. There's so much depth to it, and some depth that we may not realize or understand unless we try to comprehend what Gandalf was actually saying there, or at least have a potential understanding of what he was saying in that part.